Life on Maui and Stephen Freid wish to gratefully acknowledge the following sponsors for making this show possible. The generous contribution of Leah Howard. Psychic Channel Leah Howard hosts Mind, Body, Spirit Radio. And also thank the following sponsors: Richard Marks, photographer; Lou Abrams, psychologist; Mandala Arts in Paia; and the Temple of Peace in Haiku. Thank you so much for your generous contributions. Welcome to Life on Maui. We have a fascinating guest today, someone who is well known around this island, Dreaming Bear Kanan. Many of you know him as an impassioned poet. Today we'll find out many of his facets, his life story, and his passions in life. Welcome to the show, Dreaming Bear.
Thank you, beautiful Brother Steve, for having me. Such an honor and a privilege to be here.
Yeah, we've been, our paths have been weaving over these past months, and here we are finally doing the show.
I know, it's amazing. When you set an intention, you say we're going to do something, and then we plant the seed in each other's hearts, and ultimately the flower begins to bloom, and we're in that moment of absolute blooming. So
be it.
Yeah, I hope.
I want to fill in people on some of your background, because I think it's fascinating. You've lived in 26 states, 17 countries. Say some of the places, paint the picture of where you've been, where you've lived. What's that been like for you?
Well, it's been an amazing journey. I think as one begins to grow in life, they begin to understand that the best experiences, the most valuable experiences, are direct experiences. And I learned long ago from an author, it's my favorite author, Thoreau, who said that there is no teacher so great as experience. So I began very early to travel around the world. I went everywhere from Russia to Nicaragua to Palestine to Lebanon to Jordan to Syria, and all with this intention, this desire to see what the rest of the world had to teach me. I really believe that the best teachers never stop being students. And so I began this quest of exploring every part of the world that my heart ever desired. And that quest led me vast places here in the U.S., to some of the most amazing, amazing places, and also to these really elaborate, exotic locations overseas. But of all the places I've been in my life, of all the places that I've gone and done things, no place has resonated so strongly with me as Maui itself.
We were having this conversation the other day, and both of us feel like we don't want to leave here.
Exactly.
It's like leaving a lover.
Exactly. Which brings me to, I wanted to say something because I didn't get a chance to say it earlier, but thank you for doing what you do as well, because it's such a blessing that you're giving the rest of the world a glimpse of our Mama Maui here, because I believe truly, and we talked about this as well, that Maui is going to become a new Mecca for people seeking expansion, people seeking heart opening. And as facilitators of that, as what you do really is to bring this Aina, this essence of aloha to the rest of the world. So thank you so much for doing that.
Thanks. Your grandmother named you Dreaming Bear. It's not just a name that, I mean, there's a lot of Maui names.
Right.
And I've always assumed that Dreaming Bear was a Maui name, something you came up with. But Dreaming Bear is a name that your grandmother gave you at birth. Tell the story behind that.
Well, when my mother first had me, when she got pregnant with me, she was only 16 years old, a very young girl, a runaway from home at the time. And
a Cherokee Indian.
A Cherokee, nonetheless. So we lived in a place in Oklahoma. My father had actually flown in. My father's Palestinian. He had come here on a student visa and met my mother.
How old was he at the time?
He was 19 when he came here, and she was 16. So they had an illicit affair, which produced a Mideast meets Midwest, as it were, child in me. And but before I was born, they gave my mother an option. They said that they thought she should have an abortion because she was only 16, and it's not a very good life ahead for a 16-year-old raising a child raising a child, as it were. And they asked her to sleep on it. And that night she fell asleep, and she had a dream. And in this dream, an angel of light, or the spirit of the one, whatever we want to call it, a voice, an essence, came to her and said, don't kill this child. He has something beautiful to offer the world. So in essence, my life was saved by a dream. And so my grandmother gave me this spirit name of Dreaming Bear. And it's called a spirit name because it really is a precursor to one's destiny, they say. So in other words, in indigenous traditions, it's common for someone to have several names throughout their lifetime. And those names might indicate different evolutions, as it were. But for her, in that moment, she said, one day, you're going to become the Dreaming Bear. And for her, that meant that I would have the courage to go ahead of my dreams and let them catch up with me, as it were. And it turns out that my whole life has really been inspired by dreams. I've never made a choice or a decision that didn't involve a dream. Premonitions through dreams, guidance, and I really found the dream time to be the most direct source of connection for me. Other than, of course, being in nature and communing that way.
Yeah. Speaking of nature, you lived in a treehouse in Twin Falls for a couple of years.
I did.
And you were saying that that was an incredible experience. Poetry was just flowing through you at that time. But there was also an element for you that it was an impoverished kind of lifestyle. But you've made a change inside of yourself. Speak to that.
Well, Twin Falls for me was really an effort to reconnect to Mama Maui, to Mama Earth, as it were.
Was that when you first arrived here?
It's when I first arrived here. I did a few wanderings and ended up at Twin Falls. And through the grace and hospitality of my Twin Falls Ohana, I just want to say thank you to you guys, each one of you, because they really reached out and saw something beautiful in my heart and allowed me the privilege and the honor to be in their presence and to live in a tree. To live in a tree house was one of my childhood dreams, of course. And it was just a beautiful star structure at the top of this Formosa koa tree. But you develop, I called the tree the lightning rod for dreams, because being there, immersed in nature, away from society, away from cars, away from modern conveniences such as electricity. I had no electricity, just firelight and candlelight. To live that way, close to the earth again, to grow our own food in our gardens, and to live a life that is based on communion with the land. It really sparks in each individual, not just myself, but I could see it happening in everyone who lives in this condition, a deep sense of groundedness, a deep sense of compassion and awareness, and it just puts you in that place where you're in constant communion. And I say that because nature is just ambient. It's always alive with something beautiful and refreshing and something filled with life essence, as it were.
Forget everything anyone ever taught you. Forget everything anyone ever taught you, especially about right or wrong, about good or bad, about beautiful or ugly, and just dance, my dear, dance. But dance the way you do when no one else is looking, and you have no reputation to protect.
This journey, I sought to escape reality, as it were. I don't know, I call it the paper-thin illusion of reality, which is this life that has us running in circles, looking for meaning in the least likely of places, under rocks and in the bottom of wine bottles, as it were. And this endless search for money, this need to get and to buy and to own. I wanted to sever myself from that world and to see if I could live a life without money. That was really my intention for the last few years. And I actually did. I lived a life without money, as much as one can do so, living off of donations, mostly of avocados and granola, and initially, and then little by little, I began to realize that, and the reason I did that was because I wanted my motives to be pure. I wanted to know that my heart was pure, that I wasn't in this as a way to get something from anyone, but I just wanted to give from the purest part of my heart. And after a few years of this, I realized, yes, my motives are pure, and furthermore, that money is just an energy. Just like an avocado or granola, money is a form of energy. It just happens to be the form of energy that makes things go around in society. So I reset my intention to allow myself to be abundant for doing what I love to do.
Yeah.
And for me, that meant inspiring hearts, to let that be what provides my way in life.
And there are quite a number of ways that I found out that you do this. I thought of you as just as a poet, but it turns out that you do shamanic readings.
That's right.
At Studio Maui. You're a minister, an ordained minister. You perform weddings, you perform funerals.
That's right.
So these are all ways, you're a speaker at occasion. So these are all ways that people can utilize what you have to offer.
That's right.
And create that cycle of how can you say it, so you can live in this world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if anyone wants to experience that, they should know that I'm always available, not just at the Studio Maui, but oftentimes I'll be down at the beach and someone will come up to me and see me and say, I feel like I should talk to you. And I'll sit and I'll have a session right there on the beach. In fact, I encourage people to seek me out in nature, because that's really where the most profound truths come through.
Yeah. Yep.
So.
Yep. And you are now on your way to Lebanon.
That's right.
Because the vast majority of your family is in a refugee camp.
That's right.
What's your intention in going to Lebanon, and who is it that's in this camp, and speak a little bit about the what awaits you when you get there?
Well, a much different world awaits me than the one that we're in right now. As people can see from this beautiful backdrop behind us, that the ocean undulates with beauty, and every moment in Maui is magical. But when you go to a place that's torn by war, when you go to a place that's impoverished, stricken with a sense of civil strife, unrest, and really over the three, I call them the three unholies, or the three non-speakables, which is money, religion, and politics. Really, that's what most wars end up being about. But you go to those places and you see how the people are much different in their approach to life and in what they can get out of life. For instance, my family, most of my family lives in a refugee camp called El Bos, and that's in southern Lebanon.
And who's there?
Well, it's all of my extended family on my father's side, including my father, my brothers and sisters, my aunts and uncles, my cousins, my grandparents. My grandfather just passed away, but the vast majority of my Palestinian family. And there, it's much different, because we worry about getting to work on time and whether or not we paid our electricity bill, or whether or not we maybe made our neighbor upset by playing our music too loud. Whereas there, they're worried about, will I get shot on my way to get water for the family, or will there be a suicide bomber today? And when and how can these children be raised in conditions where they don't know anything but civil strife? They don't know anything but this brutality. And so for my brothers and sisters, they live in a vastly different world. For my family, I get to come to paradise because I was the one that was born here. But they all have to stay there because of fate, because of politics, because of whatever may be keeping them there. Nonetheless, my thought is not that anyone should begin to feel sorry for me or for my family or for anyone in this world who is under these conditions, but rather that instead of feeling sorry for, that they could send out an intention of compassion. That is just to say, be aware that there are people in this world who are your relatives, who are your brothers and your sisters, who are suffering in really horrible ways. And if we can just say to each other, I care, and I acknowledge that pain, and I acknowledge that suffering, then I think we take diplomacy to a whole new level. We really begin to create dialogues. I call them dialogues of divinity, where we can let one another know, truly know, that we support one another.
Speaking of pain and suffering, there's obviously been a lot that's forged your life to what it's been. And some of the things have been that you saw your 3-year-old brother killed in front of your eyes. You saw your younger sister kidnapped. These are some of the things you saw. How did those things affect your life?
Well, they really determined my life. At the time, I didn't realize. 8 years old with my little brother, normal sunny day in the afternoon, playing out in the front yard.
So you were 8, he was 3?
I was 8 and he was 3.
Mm-hmm.
And he was my little shadow, my little brother, everything in the world to me. When you're a big brother, all you want to do is be a good big brother, at least in my family. And to watch him get killed right in front of my face at the age of 8, not having known what death was at that age, not having known what loss was, to see it happen really robs one of this sense of innocence, this sense that children have, that the whole world is beautiful and that everything's going to be all right. That was stripped from me in a matter of moments.
He got hit by a car.
He got hit by a car. He wandered into the street, and a man who had been not paying attention and drinking hit him. And I watched as this car connected with his little baby body and sent it flying through the air. Every bone in his body was shattered. My mother ran out of the house and began screaming out to God to save his life. And the story is a brutal story if we wanted to go into the details, but more important than that was just the image of having watched the one that I loved most pass. And then just a few months after that, having experienced the loss of my little sister as we walked to school, she was taken by someone. And I crumbled to the side of the road, and I watched her look at me through the back glass of this guy's truck as they drove off, and I thought to myself, why me? Why are so many bad things happening to me? Am I a bad person? And you would think at the age of 8, how does a child process these kinds of feelings of responsibility?
Well, there's a couple of things that happened from that. One is that you actually embodied your brother's spirit at that point. So how's that played out for you in your life, actually embodying that spirit?
It has been, I realized when my brother died that I had an opportunity to live life for 2, that I could live the kind of life that made up for the one that he lost. In other words, I could do everything I ever dreamed of doing without excuse and without warrant or fear of insecurity, that I could go everywhere I wanted to go, that I could be anything I wanted to be, that I gave myself permission to fulfill my potential, as it were, to become a writer, an artist, a poet, a musician, someone who is actively engaged in life in a way that gives back beauty to existence. And I did that really in an effort to resurrect his life, or the one that he had lost. My poetry really became an effort to rewrite him back into existence initially, and developed from there into this deeper desire to see people who have been broken and shattered, no matter what the circumstances of their life might have been, to see them have the courage to reach within that darkness and to understand that that darkness is the womb for which they can give birth to the light of themselves, and to transform really that ugliness, that horror into something beautiful, to transmute tears into tenderness.
So it's really not just having watched these things happening, you also experienced this. Your mother was very young, and she was very abusive to you.
That's right.
To the point of broken bones and some very intense stuff. So you've learned in your life, you have something on your back, which we can't show the camera right now. It says forgiveness.
That's right.
And you were telling me a story that I want you to tell the audience about your mother and that day and her beating you and something that happened in that moment that had you come into epiphany of forgiveness.
Definitely. Well, it really began for me after my brother died and my sister were kidnapped. I began to experience firsthand the effects of what it means to have a mother that has lost her way. And I want to preview this by saying that I love my mother with all of my heart. And Mom, if you're watching this, I want you to know you are the most beautiful woman in the whole world, and I will always love you no matter what. Because truly we owe a debt to our mothers. They're the unsung heroes of our life. And I believe that if we can forgive them, because they've just done their best, if we can give to them the gratitude of acknowledgement that that's where we come from their sweet, tender womb, and let them know how grateful we are that we've done something really beautiful in this world. So, Mother, I love you. But unfortunately, my mother at that time in her life, being such a young woman and having no guidance of her own, having lost her youngest child, having had her daughter kidnapped, having felt broken, became, rightly so perhaps, really unsure of who she was, really ungrounded and really shattered, really absolutely shattered. And unfortunately, she needed to take her anger out some way. And I was the closest thing in the vicinity. So oftentimes, she would beat me brutally and tell me things like, I hate you and I wish you were never born, and threaten to kill me in my sleep even, to the point at which, as a child, you begin to say, if my own mother, the one that brought me into this world, doesn't love me, what kind of a world is this? And on one particular occasion, I learned forgiveness and the power of forgiveness, because I thought I deserved all these beatings. I really thought that when she was slamming my head against the wall, I deserved this because I let my brother die. I let my sister get taken. But the truth was, I was 8 years old, and no 8-year-old child deserves anything remotely like that. But she came into my room and she grabbed a book off my shelf, and I was on my knees praying, and she threw this book at my head, and she said, I want you to get up and do your chores. And I said, Mom, I'm praying right now. When I'm done, I'll do my chores. And she walked over to me, and this was the last time, by the way, that she ever struck me. This went on from the time I was 8 to the time I was 16. For a few years, I lived with my grandmother, and we'll talk about that, hopefully, because that was the redeeming factor. Yeah. But she grabbed me by my shirt, she pulled me up, and she punched me right in my face, and she said, I hate you, and I wish you were never born. And I wanted to react. My fist clenched, and I was 16, I was just as big as her at that time. But then something else came up inside of me and it said, no, this is your mother. You love her unconditionally. And from a source beyond myself, I was able to say to her in that moment, Mother, I love you, and I forgive you of everything. And astonished, she stepped back, but still determined to inflict her aggression, struck me again. And this time, tears came from my eyes, and I said, Mother, I love you, and I forgive you of everything. And I watched my mother, who was in that moment filled with rage and anger, I watched something break inside of her. That rage dissolved. And she stepped back, and she said, how could you say that to me? And I said, because you're my mother. And that was the last time she ever took any of that aggression out on me, because I think that it made her acknowledge in that moment that love was the answer, that forgiveness was possible. And that also became the catalyst to mend our relationship and to mend her broken heart, because she deserves that kind of forgiveness. I think anyone who's been through trauma, especially a mother losing children, deserve to be forgiven and given a second chance. And in that moment, we remended something that had been shattered by tragedy. And that's when I learned. That's when I learned that our capacity to forgive each other really does give each other permission to begin again.
Yeah. Incredible story. Incredible story. And so how did your grandmother come into the picture? I know she was a light in your life. She, I think up until that point, you had felt like women were evil.
That's right. My mother had convinced me that women were brutal and mean and uncaring. And the truth of the matter was, not that women were that way, but just that pain makes people that way. But at the time, I associated the two. My grandmother came into the picture because at that time, my father wasn't around. He was gone. And so the only person that I could turn to, the only person that could be turned to, was my grandmother. And it was really my mother's own intuition that she could no longer care for me. She dropped me off at my grandmother's in the middle of the night and left without a word. And I didn't see her again for a few years. But in those few years, I was able to receive, instead of beatings from a woman, tenderness in the form of my grandmother's living embodiment. Not Jesus, Buddha, Gandhi, Muhammad, Martin Luther King Jr., or Mother Teresa herself have taught me near as much as my own grandmother. And just by living example of the way she loved me so tenderly and sweetly, how she would get up in the morning and kiss me awake on my forehead and say, don't you know Granny loves you? And I'm so proud of you, and it's going to be all right. And I've realized that as I was self-destructing and inwardly going into this place of self-hatred, that there was this voice, this woman, this kind-hearted woman who reached down into the darkness and said, baby, it's going to be okay. And she gave me permission to forgive. That really was the catalyst. To be loved by even one person in this world gives us permission to heal. And she became my hero. I dedicated everything I ever did to her memory while she was alive, and continue to dedicate all my books and poetry to her. And believe now with all my heart that a woman empowered, a feminine, empowered woman who walks in her fullness is really the salvation of this planet, because they have the nurturing and the caring and the capability. And so I began then to realize the great love that women have to offer, and the tremendous, I wouldn't say the word debt so much as offering of gratitude that we have the opportunity to acknowledge each woman in our life, whether it be our mother, our lover, our sister, or our friend. To all the women in this world, I know on behalf of myself and Steve, we would say thank you for being so nurturing and loving, and for giving us permission, and for forgiving us. And now that we are in this place, I really believe and excited, I know that you are as well, that men and women are coming together. And we're saying, let's look past all that man-woman stuff, and let's just begin to see each other as amazing beings instead. Because I believe that if we begin to see the best in each other, that others will begin to see the best in us in return. And my grandmother really taught me that. She taught me one of the most crucial lessons of my life, and you and I spoke about this lesson, which is that if we can manage to respect everyone despite their disrespect of us, that we really go a step in the right direction in terms of being a living embodiment.
Respect everyone despite their disrespect of us.
That's right. That's right.
I think there probably couldn't be anything more powerful than that. Extraordinary. Well, you're on the subject. I'm going to flick this one out there.
Okay.
You're talking about women. So, what's that been in your life? I mean, you've had what a relationship with your mom and all of that, and the grandmom. So how has that played out in your relationships with females, both in terms of long-term, short-term relationships? I mean, you know, those primary things affect our lives so much. So through your life and current day, how does that affect your relationships?
Well, for me, the transformation, I like the term relationship. I'm glad you used that, because that's a broad-based term that applies to every kind, whether it be romantic or interpersonal, whatever it might be. It really led me to explore communication in its various forms and connections in its various forms, which led me to get my first master's degree in communications. Okay,
so you have two master's degrees.
That's right. One in completion and one already on the books.
And the one that's completed now is
a MA in communications, ranging from interpersonal to intrapersonal.
And what's the one that's in process?
And the one that's in process is Native American philosophy.
Okay, I want to interject here, because this is an amazing image to me. This guy was a college professor for how many years?
Since 2000.
2000. So for a number of years, and he came to work in a suit and a tie. Is that correct?
It was a difficult thing, I got to tell you, Steve, to go from I'm a barefoot boy, I'm a country boy, I can't be helped, you know. But to get to that place where I thought I could really make a difference, I said I'm willing to make any compromise I need to make on the exterior, as long as it means I can be effective. And I was, because this tragedy sponsored in me this desire for creating a new form of communication through action. And that's what I was able to do in the colleges. I was able to send my students into terminally ill hospitals to visit children with cancer. We put on puppet shows for them and reminded them of the beauty of life. We were able to go into convalescent homes in Southern California and visit the elderly and let them know that they're not forgotten, that they are our ancestors and that we love and respect them. We were able to go to the homeless people in the streets of Long Beach and feed them and hold rallies for them and just let them know that we care. And we're not just in these classrooms, which are these four walls, but that we can really be compassionate. And that's what I used that time for. But it affected my whole life in terms of my relationships, because when you're brutalized at a very young age, you go into a very mistrusting place. You say to yourself, everyone is out to get me, and the whole world, it's me against the world kind of a mentality.
Yeah.
to break through that, I learned perhaps the most important lesson in my life, and that was that this pain and this joy, and we've spoken of this as well, that our pain and our joy are two children that we give birth to through the experiences of our life. And if we say to our joy, the child of our joy, we say to it, I love you and you're beautiful and I want to clone you and share you with my friends at parties and give you away as decoration in the special places of my life. And then we say to our pain child, or the experience of our pain, we say, you're ugly and I hate you, and the same things my mother said to me. I wish you were never born and leave me, and I don't want to see your face. Then what happens to that pain child is much the same as what happened to me as a child, which is you go inward and you say, you become bitter, you become insecure, you become fearful. So to begin at a very early age with those kinds of traumas, I began to see them as a challenge rather than an inconvenience, rather than a tragedy. I began to see all of that ugliness as a challenge to overcome. That is to say to myself, no matter how bad things get in life, no matter how much it hurts, you never give up, and you always seek expansion. And that has been the philosophy of every relationship that I've been in, and whether it be a romantic one or interpersonal one or a familial one, that I want the kind of relationships in my life that last for the rest of my life. I'm not interested in fly-by-night connections where we treat each other like decorations or extras in the movie of our own life. I want to connect with people. I want to grab them by their hand and say, we're here together in this moment. The world is waiting for this generation to do something that no other generation has ever done. And for me, that's something that can't be lived without, this desire. I wake up in the morning with an overwhelming passion to inspire people. And oftentimes in my romantic relationships, that becomes tricky because they say, well, you just want to go inspire the world, and why aren't you here? And so I'm still struggling with that part of my life on how can I evolve and be there, because you want to, when you have a family, and I'm not ready for that yet, but when I do, I want to be everything that my family wasn't. I want to be available. I want to be caring and nurturing and give the child a real chance. And for my beloved, I want to be that as well. But in this moment in my life, if you were to ask me, my answer would be that I'm in love with God. I'm in love with Spirit, or quote-unquote God. People hear that word and they get kind of freaked out, you know. But I'm in love with life and with every moment. I call it my second innocence, because in watching my brother die, I lost my first innocence, which was really an innocence based in not knowing. But this second innocence, the one I'm feeling now, which is this refascination with you, with every being on the planet, with every moment, it's coming from a knowing. And in the knowing is, yes, the world is ugly and brutal, and yes, we've been given a really horrible place to exist in some ways. If you were in a refugee camp, for instance, you would know that.
Yeah.
But no, we're not responsible for the world we've been given so much as we are responsible for the world that we leave behind. And I began to see through this brutality that each moment is a chance, because once you've lost everything, you're free to be anything. And I felt I lost everything at the age of 8, and which really liberated me from having to fit in, as evidenced by my appearance today. And, but I did go for a while through a phase of really feeling angry and hurt and broken, and like anyone would, feeling shattered. But I realized in the breaking of my heart that it had only been broken open. Yeah. Broken open.
Yeah. Yeah. And I found out something that the staff that you walk with is because people can get a certain impression.
Right.
You were telling me that the staff is from something that happened to you.
That's right.
In your life. What happened?
In 2000, I was in San Diego, California. It was my senior year in college, and I had a motorcycle accident. And with myself and my then beloved, we were involved in this really brutal accident on Harbor Freeway in San Diego. And as a result of that accident and several reoccurring injuries after that, I developed a series of herniations in my lower back and my mid-back, preventing me from ambulation at times, having me confined to a wheelchair for a while, really coming to a place where my whole thought, I'd never been to the hospital in my life before this, except having been born, of course, but no physical injuries of any kind that I could think of other than the brutality of being beaten as a child. But this was different because I couldn't walk.
Yeah.
Suddenly I could not walk, and that changes one's life when you think, I have no use of my legs. And in the Cherokee tradition, in the Native American tradition, my grandmother always taught me that you make medicine, and medicine for a native is just power. It's just essence. She said, what do you want? I said, I want to get better. I want to walk again. She said, well, you make a medicine staff. I said, a medicine staff? And she taught me that if I created a staff that embodied what I want to do, and that was to walk again. And how did I want to walk? I wanted to walk in spirit, that I could create a staff that really acknowledged that, and that would be my medicine staff. So I created my very first staff, which is the one I have with me today. I have about 10 of them now. And it was the eagle staff. And I walked with that, and I created it with this sense that, because eagle is the visionary, eagle is the spirit. And my thought was that if I'm going to begin to walk a new life again, because I felt like my old life had been broken at that point, I'm going to begin to walk a life that is sacred, a life that expresses that I see the holiness in each being, the Dalai Lama in each person, as it were. And that staff began to give me the power to move my legs again, to begin to move my body, and then suddenly I could walk again. And then suddenly I wasn't in the wheelchair anymore, and it was just miraculous for me to be able to have that. The problem isn't completely gone. It's still there. It still persists, so I still carry the staff, and it's also a beautiful reminder with each step to walk in spirit. And I know that oftentimes people see me on the street, and you say, who is this crazy guy walking with a staff, wearing a sarong? And I would say, only have compassion on me for being myself, and know that you are beautiful just as you are as well. But oftentimes people mistake the staff for a form of ego, whereas really it's just a form of spirit and a way to heal from a shatterment, from being broken, as it were, physically.
Yeah.
And I would encourage anyone in this moment feeling pain in your own body, whether it be emotional or physical, if you've been broken in some way, do not give up. Don't let the fear of the moment overwhelm you. Know that it's going to be okay. Just tell yourself, no matter how bad it seems, it's all right. And give yourself permission. Begin to create medicine. Begin to create power. Begin to envision yourself getting better, and that will be the reality for you.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's a wonderful reminder how not to ever judge from appearances. Things are never what they appear. And I mean, in the past few days, getting to know you more, I'm seeing this whole other incredible human being that is just wonderful. Not that you, I mean, I always thought you were wonderful, through your poetry and everything, but just another aspect, another dimension.
Well, I'm very aware. It's not uncommon for me to walk into places and just have everybody look at me, and in that moment I'm very aware that it's our tendency in society to judge one another, and I'm okay with that. I can receive judgments. I can have people come up to me and tell me brutal things and just say right back to them, I love you and you're beautiful, and that's all right. I give people permission to have their prejudices in whatever form they choose to have them, but I encourage each being to allow us to begin to create a world where it's okay for people to just be themselves. And for us to, instead of looking at people, if we can really look at people, and instead of right away going, oh this and oh that, we can just say, instead we can say, wow, there's a beautiful being who is really just a reflection of myself, because as you and I talked about, and as I learned in getting this master's degree, that really 99% of what we think, say, and feel about other people is really just a reflection of ourselves. So if we can keep that in mind, and we can remember that what we say and think about others is just something in ourselves that maybe we haven't come to terms with yet. Yeah, sure. That would go a step in the right direction of creating more compassionate communication.
Yeah, yeah. You have 8 published books.
That's right.
You have 4 spoken word CDs. As we've already mentioned, minister, shamanic reading, so forth. What you can do for us today, maybe right now, is grace us with one of your poems.
I'd be honored to do that.
Yeah.
You're blessed when you're at the end of your rope. You're blessed when you're at the end of your rope. With less of you, there is more of spirit and its rule. You're blessed when you feel that you've lost what is most dear to you. You're blessed when you feel that you've lost what is most dear to you. For only then can you be embraced by the one most dear to you. You're blessed when you're content with just who you are. No more, no less. For that's the moment you find yourself to be the proud owner of everything that can't be bought. You're blessed when you've worked up a good appetite for kindness, for its food and drink in the best meal you'll ever eat. You're blessed when you care. At the moment of being careful, you find yourself cared for. You're blessed when you get your inside world, your heart and your mind put right, for then you can see the beauty happening in the outside world, and you can see yourself happening in every person's eyes. You're blessed. You are so blessed when life takes from you all that you thought you most wanted, for then you are free of attachments and free to show others how to cooperate instead of compete or fight, for that's the moment you find who you really are and your place in this universal family. For look at the birds of the field. Look at the flowers growing. The birds neither go to work nor have job titles, and yet there they are, free and careless in the sky. Look at the wildflowers in the field, most of which no one will ever even see. The 10,000 best-dressed people in America pale in comparison to even one of these. If that is how the world treats a wildflower and a bird, most of which no one ever even sees, don't you think existence will care for you, tend to you, provide for you? Notice, dear ones, notice how the earth has never said to even a single tree, you owe me. Notice how the earth has never said to anyone, you owe me. You see what can happen with a love like that? It helps the whole world to breathe.
It's so exquisite. It's really very much in the tradition of Rumi and Kabir and Hafiz, these poets who are impassioned by life. It's not just it's anything but cerebral. It's about a lust for life itself, a dance with life, exactly. A love affair with life itself.
That's a beautiful way, and that's why I call them love spells, because I really believe that our words are our magic. And that if we can begin to speak the kind of words that are really creating magic, if we understand that our words create our reality, and we begin to generate thought, conscious thought, that propels us in an expanded sort of way, that we can then share that joy. I'm not here to change the world, as it were. I think we talked about this, that we're here really to inspire the world, to want to be whatever it wants to be, but through inspiration, through the power of what we say. And mirroring that with our actions is the key, because it's where action and word meet to become the embodiment of our highest ideals. And for me, this poetry, if you're equating it with Kabir and Rumi, I can only bow and say thank you, because that is the greatest honor you could have paid me. But more than that, I can say that my hope and intention with these words is that all that brutality that I suffered, all that darkness, would not become a story about a kid getting hurt, and yet that rather it will become a story that if one kid, a Palestinian Cherokee nobody, someone with heritages of displacement and the least likely in the universe to not become a statistic, if someone like that can take one person's love, the love of a grandmother maybe, and transform it into something like this, these words that come through. And they come through, I say come through, because my prayer is, let me be a vessel. Let me speak and say and feel and live a life worth writing about, and the kind of life that inspires other people, to give them permission to do the same with their own lives. And in that sense, these words really are what I was born to say.
That's wonderful. And if people want to get in touch with you for any of the things that you offer. The website?
SweetAngelOfLight.com.
Wonderful. So they can get in touch with you. You're on your way overseas shortly, so you're going to be spending June and July, the rest of June and July in Lebanon?
I'll be abroad, and I'm open-ended on the terms of the dates, but I'll be spending partial summer there, and then coming back to, hopefully, to Mama Maui to get a big warm hug and kiss from this place and all my beautiful friends here. Yeah. And I would invite anyone who wants to contact me for any reason to visit Sweet Angel of Light, whether it be just to say hello, just to send a word of prayer, a thought. You can also make contributions towards the compassion cause. We're calling it Celebration of Compassion. This is what the new effort we're launching in the world. I'm going to be taking media that we generate here in Maui to Lebanon, showing it to Palestinian refugee children and saying, look, there are people in America who love you. Because they've gotten this idea in their head that the whole world is their enemy, and that America especially hates them because it's American bombs that get dropped. It's American bullets in the guns. So we want to send them a message saying, no, look, it's the politicians and their agenda that's making that happen. The real people in this world are saying we love you and we care. And I just spoke at Waldorf School, and the children there sent me with a beautiful package back to send to Lebanon to the children over there, to share media with them, and then to bring back from their media of their reaction to that kind of love.
So you're creating a dialogue via the media, via the video.
Dialogue
fabulous.
Exactly.
So I want to really thank you so much for being on the show today.
It's my great honor and privilege.
You know, this is wonderful. And I want to thank all of the sponsors for today's show as well. And anyone who wants to step forward for future shows, we welcome sponsorship. You can contact me through my website and my email address, which you see after the credits at the end of the show. For this show, I want to give particular thanks to Leah Howard, the incredible psychic and channel. I want to give thanks to Richard Marks, wedding photographer extraordinaire. I want to give thanks to Lou Abrams, Dr. Lou Abrams, psychologist, and his incredible wife Mariah, the belly dancer. And I want to give thanks to Mandala and Paia, and to the Temple of Peace and Haiku. All of those folks helped sponsor this show, and I'm very, very grateful. So that's it for this episode of Life on Maui. And stay tuned for the next incredible show. And until then, aloha.
Aloha.
Call me crazy, but I'm never giving up my dreams. No matter how far away they seem.